More than half a century ago, in the midst of the Vietnam War's smoke and fire, a beautiful love blossomed between a young American soldier and a Vietnamese girl. They vowed to be together forever, but that promise could never come true. Two souls deeply in love were forced apart. Over 50 years have passed. The once young American soldier is now an old man with silver hair, yet he has never forgotten that girl. Her image continues to haunt his mind, slipping into his every dream. Love story of an American soldier and a Vietnamese girl. After more than 50 years, I still wait for you. David Thompson often wakes up startled in the middle of the night by a dream so vivid that it keeps repeating itself. It is the image of a gentle Vietnamese girl with long, jet black hair, and especially those soulful eyes sad and full of longing as they gaze at him. Those eyes make his heart ache, for they're the very eyes of the girl he once loved so deeply. More than 50 years ago, during the 1960 to 1970, David was a 24-year-old young man ordered to Vietnam to fight in the war. Saigon in those days, known as the Pearl of the Far East, was a city that never seemed to sleep. Its streets shimmered under a sea of lights, alive with the constant flow of people and traffic. Along Tuyur Street, Kai Tree, where the Grand Tran hung Dow Boulevard, bars, nightclubs, and cafes stood shoulder to shoulder, bursting with energy. For many young American soldiers, these places offered a fleeting escape from exhaustion and the loneliness of a foreign land. Sometimes they would slip into a dimly lit bar, sipping a glass of whiskey as soft music drifted through the air. Other times, they found themselves at a small sidewalk cafe, savoring a sweet iced coffee that seemed to chase away the sweltering heat. And when night fell, they flocked to the grand cinemas of Saigon, Rex, Eden, Continental, the most elegant theaters of the era. Among them was a young American soldier named David Thompson. He often found himself at a familiar little cafe near the military base in Ben Thanh Market. It was there, in the most unexpected of moments, that he met his destiny, a petite, radiant Vietnamese girl, barely in her 20s. Their eyes met across the room, and something unspoken passed between them. David, drawn by an invisible thread, walked over and struck up a conversation. That was when he learned her name, Lu Hang, a gentle, graceful young woman who embodied the timeless beauty of Vietnam. From those first brief conversations, a bond began to grow. Soon, there were quiet afternoons spent together hand in hand, strolling down Tuyur Street, now known as Dong Khoi in District 1. They shared warm, crusty banh mi sandwiches, sipped sweet iced coffee, and watched the bustling flow of people and traffic pass by, as if the whole world had slowed down just for them. It wasn't exactly a promise, but one evening David had softly told Hang, "When the war is over, I'll find a way to bring you to America." She believed him. They both understood, without needing many words, the depth of feeling they held for each other. But then came the cruel twist of fate. In 1973, with the signing of the Paris Peace Accords, the United States ordered a rapid withdrawal from Vietnam. On the eve of his departure, David was summoned to an emergency assembly. There was no time, no chance to return to Ben Thanh Market to see Hang. No chance to say goodbye. As the helicopter lifted off from Saigon, David's heart shattered. He wept uncontrollably, the weight of anguish and regret burning into his soul. That pain, that unfinished farewell, would follow him back to America and linger with him for the rest of his life. In the early years back in America, David clung to the news about the Vietnam War, hoping somehow that a chance would come for him to return and find Hang. But nothing ever came. Each day his heart ached. He missed her terribly, unbearably. As time passed, hope seemed impossible. He was forced to bury her memory deep inside and build a new life. He married an American woman, had 2 children, and threw himself into endless work trying to drown out the ghosts of war and the memories of Vietnam. Yet as the years went by, that haunting ache for Hang only grew stronger, especially after retirement. And after his wife passed away, the longing returned with a vengeance. It slipped even into his dreams that, in those dreams, he would see Hang sometimes cradling a child in her arms, sometimes standing alone in the bustling streets of Saigon, her eyes filled with sorrow. And David would wake trembling, whispering to himself, "Did I leave behind a child I never knew?" Often he would sit for hours, staring at the old, worn photograph he had carried with him for decades, wondering if she was still alive. And then one night, in a dream so vivid it felt real, he heard her voice. "I love living near Ben Ton Market. Do you remember?" That single line pierced his heart. It was enough. At 75 years old, David made a decision. He would return to Vietnam, no matter what, to search for the woman he had never stopped loving. "I'm still waiting for you at Ben Ton Market." David reached out to Vietnamese community newspapers in the U.S., as well as veterans associations, hoping for a lead. All he had was a fragile thread of memory, a young woman who once lived in a small alley near Two-Year Street, who loved going to Ben Ton Market. But after the war, the city had changed so much that no one seemed to remember. The day David set foot at Tan Son Nhut Airport, he almost broke down in tears. The emotions were overwhelming. He checked into a small hotel near the city center and began his long days of searching. Every day, he would wander through Ben Ton Market, showing strangers an old photograph of a young Vietnamese woman, asking if anyone recognized her. Each time, he received only a gentle shake of the head. On nights when no news came, David often sat alone in his hotel room and wept quietly. Then one night, she appeared again in his dream, whispering, "I'm still waiting for you at Ben Ton Market." Her voice echoed in his heart, and when he awoke, he made a decision. At 5 a.m., he rose with new determination and returned to the market to search once more. He searched from morning until dusk, still nothing. But just as the day seemed lost, around 6 p.m., as he stepped toward the market gate, his eyes met those of an elderly woman selling drinks. The moment their eyes locked, he froze. That gaze, it was hauntingly familiar. His skin tingled with goosebumps. Though age had weathered her face, David knew instantly. These were the eyes he could never forget. His voice trembled as he asked, Are you Laheng?" The old woman froze, staring at him in disbelief. Then, with her own voice breaking, she whispered, "David, is it really you?" In that instant, the two elderly souls collapsed into each other's arms, sobbing openly in the middle of Ben Ton Market. Passers-by stopped, watching silently, as if time itself had slowed. Later, Heng took David back to her small house tucked inside an alley beside the market. As the door creaked open, David froze in shock. Sitting inside was a middle-aged man, around 50, with familiar eyes and a nose that mirrored his own younger face. His clothes were worn, his features weathered by hardship, but the unmistakable trace of American blood was there. Through her tears, Heng choked out the words, "Do you know who he is? This is Dung, your son." David's knees nearly gave way. His voice cracked, shaking as he gasped, "My God, is this real?" Heng nodded, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Yes, he truly is your son." David collapsed, trembling uncontrollably, his heart breaking open with a lifetime of emotion. "Oh God, my son." Heng recalled that after David left, she discovered she was pregnant. At that time, being unmarried and carrying a child meant certain shame and harsh judgment from society. And this was no ordinary child, it was a mixed-race baby. Life, already unforgiving, became even more difficult. But her mother gently urged her to keep the child. So Heng raised little Dung, enduring every hardship, every cruel whisper from the neighbors. When the orderly departure program later opened a path for Amerasian children to go to the United States, she filed the paperwork. But fate intervened. Her second husband fell gravely ill, and she could not bring herself to abandon him. By the time policies changed, her application had expired. Dung's chance to come to America was gone forever. The three of them sat in silence for a long while. Finally, David leaned forward, clasped Dung's hand, and with broken Vietnamese whispered, his voice trembling, "Dung, ba xin lỗi. I'm sorry. I abandoned you for more than 50 years." Those words, simple yet shattering, washed away the distance of half a lifetime. Tears welled in Dung's eyes as he looked at his father, not with anger, but with deep emotion and understanding. Soon after, David made a decision. He would stay in Vietnam. He rented a small shop front near Ben Ton Market, where he and Dung opened a food stall, serving fried sausages and American snacks blended with Vietnamese flavors. It was his way of giving his son not only a livelihood, but also a future. By then, Hang was 72. Worn down by decades of labor, her health was failing. David gently urged her to rest, to let go of work. Each day, he cooked meals for her with his own hands, and sometimes the two of them would take quiet walks through the market where their story had first begun. And when night fell, that was the family's favorite hour. The three of them would sit together on the front porch, sharing old stories, laughing softly and savoring the peace they had spent a lifetime searching for.